Hello everybody, this is Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and we are reading the Torah portion for this coming Shabbat. This is the 47th reading in this year's cycle, and it's going to be Deuteronomy 11:26 to 16:17. So get your scriptures out. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. It's the foundation of all scripture, but every book in scripture is important. Every word written is profitable for man. So we focus on Torah as the foundation of everything, but that does not say everything else is not important. It is all important, and it all goes together. There's no contradiction when it comes to the scriptures. If you really understand it, you see it's a consistent message throughout the scriptures. And now we're going to look at, start reading in this week's Torah portion, Deuteronomy 11:26, and we see the children getting the straightforward message of what they are to do, how they are to do it, and the consequences of blessings and curses that's going to come based on what they do. So I'm feeling really good because, as I said previously, Deuteronomy is one of my favorite books, and especially of the Torah, it is the one I enjoy the most because I like the hard message that it gives. And I don't say hard to accomplish, but the hard message is hard and straight up and straightforward. I like that message. So Deuteronomy 11:26, it says, "Behold, I set before you today a blessing and a curse." And that really is what it comes down to, folks, a blessing and a curse. You know, when you get obedience, that goes along with blessings, and curses goes along with disobedience. That's really all you need to know about when it comes to what's going to happen if we keep the Torah or not keep the Torah. See, we're not saved by keeping the Torah. If you think that, then you'll start getting into we're saved by works. No, we're not saved by keeping works. We're saved by the blood of Messiah, but if we're truly saved, we should have every desire to do the works. Well, if salvation is our ultimate goal and we're not saved by doing the works, you know, why should we be doing the works? Folks, we are blessed for being obedient to our Creator. And being obedient means following His instructions. And that's what the scriptures give us specifically here in the Torah, the instructions of what we're to follow to be blessed. And it says here, straight up, we start off with 11:26 as we just said, "I set before you today a blessing and a curse." And verse 27 says, "A blessing if you hear the commandments of our Creator Yahweh, your Elohim, which I command you today. And a curse if you will not hear the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, but will turn aside out of the way which I command you today, to go after other gods which you have not known." And we see during Sodom and Gomorrah, there were a whole bunch of people in that country that went to other gods, and we see what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. We saw what happened during the time of Noah, when all the other people were turning to other gods, and Noah was the righteous one and was blessed with his family for being obedient. And today, the same thing is happening, folks. People are going to other gods, and they have curses in their life, and it's clearly visible, but they're not turning back. And the scriptures say if he turns back, you'll be welcomed with welcome arms. Verse 29, "And it shall be when Yahweh your Elohim shall bring you into the land which you go to possess it, that you shall set the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan, behind the way of the sunset, in the land of the Canaanites that live in the Arab, opposite Gilgal, beside the oaks of Morah? For you are to cross over the Jordan to go into possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you possess it and live in it. And take heed to do all the statutes and judgments which I am giving before you today." Now some people will go and say that this was for the children when they're going into the promised land, and it's not for us today. And that is not a consistent message with the scriptures. It's a wonderful idea to say the children that are going to the promised land. Well, we have our promised land today, and that is the land where we are. This is the land that is part of every covenant. Is where we are. We have that freedom and that responsibility to do the commands of our wonderful Creator, so we receive the blessings. Now, there's many prophecies and there's many end times scriptures about what's going to happen, where we're going to be, and what exactly is going to go on. But we have to look at now, folks. We're not like the children of Israel on the opposite side of the Jordan, looking over into the promised land. But we are where we are, and the promised land is with obedience. And wherever we are, we can enter that promised land and receive those blessings if we're obedient to our wonderful Creator. That's what we have to remember. And it's not just for a scriptural time, it's for all times. It says in chapter 12 here, And these are the statutes and the judgments which you shall take heed to do in the land which Yahweh the Elohim of your fathers has given to you, to possess it all the days that you live on the earth. Now, he already gave many of these statutes, if not all of them. And in fact, he told them to go in there and destroy every unclean thing and all the unclean people. Do not mingle with them. And now he's giving them more direct commands of what they should do. Via Moses, of course. Chapter 12, verse 2 says, you shall completely destroy all the places where the nations which you are dispossessing, serving their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every leafy tree. And you shall break down their altars and shatter their standing pillars, and you shall burn down their Asherahs with fire, and you shall cut down the carved images of their gods, and shall destroy their name out of that place. You shall not do so to Yahweh your Elohim, but you shall seek to the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose out of all your tribes, for you shall seek his dwelling, to put his name there, and you shall go there. And you shall bring your burnt offerings there, and your sacrifices, and your tithes, and the heave offering of your hand, and your vows, and your freewill offering, and the firstlings of your herd and of your flock. And you shall eat there before Yahweh your Elohim, and shall rejoice in all that you put your hand to, and your household with which Yahweh your Elohim has blessed you. So these are the exact instructions that the children had back then. And it says in verse 8, you shall not do according to all that we are doing here today, each all doing what is right in his own eyes. Now that is powerful, folks, because the children were told not to do what felt right to them or good to them. And that is the number one problem we have today. Everyone feels that as long as they do good, everything will be fine. But then when you define or ask them what good is, and they say, well, whatever I believe is good for me is good for me. And they might not come just straight out and say it, but that is what every culture and what every religion and what every system and what every person is pretty much believing today. As long as I get good, I'm going to get good in return, and what is good is what I think is best for me. That's it. Well, we know we need a one moral guideline, one moral standard, and we have that, and that's the scriptures. Whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not, whether we feel it's best for us or not, you know, it doesn't matter how we feel, folks. If you believe the scriptures are the word of our Creator, and it doesn't feel good to you to do something that he says to do, you still have to do it. You resist the sinful nature that goes against his word, and you stick to his guidelines and instructions. You know, and so it's against everything he says that goes against our human nature. That's why when we accept Yeshua as Messiah, something is supposed to change our heart. We no longer desire to do those things. Yes, it is a consistent battle with our flesh, folks. But, you know, we're always going to come out on top if we stick to his word, if we have faith, and if we fear him. You shall not do according to all that we are doing here today, each doing all that is right in his own eyes. Exactly. Not in your own eyes, but in our Creator's eyes. For you have not come to the rest and to the inheritance which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to you. And you shall cross over the Jordan, and shall live in a land which Yahweh your Elohim is causing you to inherit. And he shall give you rest from all your enemies around you, and you shall live securely. And this came at a time, and will be at a time, where all of the unfaithful were not living securely. Picture living in a worse neighborhood with no locks on your door. You're going to be scared somebody's going to break in, at least, and might even do something worse. Well, here it says, you shall live securely. There's other parts in the scriptures which we're going to be reading, and especially in the end of Deuteronomy, which talks about not being able to sleep because you're living in fear. You're so scared and indecisive, and just so many issues going on. Those are curses, folks. This is a blessing that you will have rest from your enemies around you, and you shall live securely. And it shall be the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. There you shall bring all that I am commanding you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifice, your tithes, and the heave offering of your hand, and all your choice freewill offerings which you vow to Yahweh. And that place, of course, is Jerusalem, and it always is Jerusalem, regardless of if a different type of people say that's not Jerusalem. It says it clearly here in the scriptures when you look at the mapping of everything. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, you and your sons and your daughters, and your male slaves and your female slaves, and the Levite within your gates, because he has no portion or inheritance with you. Take heed to yourself that you not offer your burnt offerings in every place that you see, but in a place which Yahweh shall choose in one of your tribes. There you shall offer your burnt offerings, and there you shall do all that I command. And of course, we're talking about Jerusalem here. Only with all that desire of your soul you shall sacrifice and shall eat meat within your gates, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. The unclean one and the clean one may eat of it, as of the gazelle and as of the hart. Only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it out as water on the earth. So here it is, folks. You shall not eat the blood. This is one of the most important scriptures of what we're to do in all of Scripture. It doesn't say to eat animals, it said not to eat the blood. Well, if you could figure out how to get the blood out, which there's kosher standards today that figured it out, so they can follow that. But I always say play it safe. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't have to worry about if all the blood's out or not, right? But I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just telling you how I make it easier for me to follow his word, and I enjoy not eating animals. You are not able to eat the tithe of your grain within your gates, and of your new wine, and your oil, and the firstlings of your herd, and your flock, and any of the vows which you vow, and your freewill offering, and the heave offering of your hand. But you shall eat it before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose, and you and your son, and your daughter, and your male slave, and your female slave, and a Levite who is within your gates. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim in all that you put your hand to. Take heed to yourself that you do not forsake the Levite as long as you live on the land. Then Yahweh your Elohim shall enlarge the border, and he shall promise as he promised you, and he shall say, I will eat flesh, because your soul desires to eat flesh. You may eat flesh according to the desire of your soul. Now remember, we just read previously, it says, do not do things that are right in your own eyes. Well, people always ask me here why he gave them flesh to eat if in the garden he said just eat fruits and vegetables. Well, it seems quite clear to me. It says, I promise you, and you shall say, I will eat flesh, because your soul desires to eat flesh. You may eat flesh according to all the desire of your soul. So he's giving them permission here because that's what they wanted. Well, we have to look at the problems that come along with that, and the disease rate and so much by eating animals. Verse 21, if the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose to put his name there is too far from you, then you shall kill of your herd and of your flock which Yahweh has given you, as I have commanded you, and you shall eat within your gates according to the desire of your soul. So now Moses is giving the children these instructions before he dies here. The children are about to go in the land. You could say, why didn't he just give it to Joshua? He wanted everyone to hear this and hear these instructions, and he was making sure everyone did. Only as the gazelle and the hart are eaten, so you shall eat of it. The unclean and the clean may eat of it alike. Only be sure not to eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat life with the flesh. You shall not eat it, you shall pour it on the earth as water. You shall not eat it in order that it may be well with you and with your sons after you, when you do that which is right in the eyes of our wonderful Creator. Remember, folks, we read not what's right in your own eyes, but what's right in His eyes. Only your holy things which you have, your vows, you shall take up and shall go to the place which Yahweh chose. And that's if you couldn't eat the animals and take the animals there because it was too far away. You shall offer your burnt offerings and the fish of the blood on the altar of Yahweh your Elohim. And the blood of your sacrifices shall be poured out on the altar of Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall eat the flesh. Take heed to listen to all these words which I am commanding you, in order that it may be well with you. Now, this is the second time where he's saying, just in these last couple of sentences, make sure you keep these guidelines and statutes so things will be well with you. So things will be well with you, not unwell with you. And that's the blessings. Things will be well with you and with your sons after you forever. When you do that is right, which is good and right in the eyes of Yahweh your Elohim. When Yahweh your Elohim shall cut off the nations before you, where you are going to possess them, you shall possess them, and you shall live in their land. Take heed to yourself that you do not be snared to follow them after they have been destroyed before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their Elohim? And I shall do so, even I. This is a warning not to inquire about them, not to do anything, have anything to do with them. You shall not do so to Yahweh your Elohim, for everything hateful to Yahweh which he detests, they have done to their gods, for they have even burned their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. All the things that I command you to do, take heed to do them, and you shall not add to it nor take away from it. And this was also found in Deuteronomy 4:2. Basically, all the things I command you to do, do it, but do not add or take away. Very powerful, folks, and very simple and straight up. Do not add or take away, but do it. It says, keep my commands, but don't add to it and don't take away from it, but keep them. Chapter 13. If a prophet or dreamer of dreams rises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign of the wonder which he spoke to you occurs, saying, let us go after other Elohim which you have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or the dreamer of dreams. For Yahweh your Elohim is testing you to know that if you love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, you shall walk after Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall fear him, and you shall keep his commandments, and you shall hear his voice, and you shall serve him, and you shall cleave to him. So that pretty much says it right there in verse 4 of chapter 13. You shall walk after Yahweh your Elohim, you shall fear him, and you shall keep his commandments, and you shall serve his voice. So it's our responsibility to know his voice, to learn his instructions, and keep them. And the prophet of that daughter or dream shall die, because he has spoken apostasy against Yahweh your Elohim, who is bringing you out of the land of Egypt, and has redeemed you out of the house of a slave, to drive you out of the way in which Yahweh your Elohim has commanded you to walk. And you shall put away evil from amongst your midst. If your brother, your mother's son, or your son or daughter, or the wife of your bosom, or your friend who is in your own soul, shall entice you secretly, saying, let us go and serve other Elohim, which you have not known, you and your fathers, of the Elohim of the people around you, those near you or far off from you, from one end of the earth and even to the other end of the earth, you shall not consent to him, nor listen to him, nor shall your eye have pity on him, nor shall you spare nor hide him, but you shall surely kill him. That's powerful, folks. I mean, there's several different places in the scripture where you're told to go ahead and kill somebody that's taken you away from Yahweh and trying to entice you to worship other gods. And we point our finger at Muslims and other cultures around the world that say that it's a violent thing, but they're just being obedient to what the scriptures say. And here it says the same thing pretty much. But you shall kill anyone here, not only anyone, your close friends, your close relatives, your own children, that are going to try to entice you to go after other gods. And I'm not saying that we should go ahead and kill somebody, because the principle of the scripture shows there's a judicial system, and you got to take these things to the people that were put in place and let them decide the faith of these people. But nevertheless, here it says, you shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be first upon him to cause him to die, and the hand of all the people in the land. And you shall stone him with stones, and he shall die, for he has sought to drive you out from Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slaves. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall not again do any such wicked thing as this among you. Now, so this is like wasn't going to happen often. It's like if you have a little child and the child's acted up and you got to spank the kid. Somebody said, I never believe in spanking. Well, if you believe that, you'll always have to spank your kid, but you never will. But if you do believe in spanking, you spank your child one time, you're never going to have to do it again, pretty much. If you do, it will be very seldom, because he's going to listen. Same thing here. Our Creator is saying that, you need to fear him. And if all these people that are enticing you to go after different gods other than Yahweh, and you destroy them, this won't be happening again, because people will know to fear Yahweh. If in one of your cities which Yahweh your Elohim has given you to live in, you hear one saying, certain man, sons of Baal, have gone out from among you, and have drawn away those who live in the city, saying, Let us go and serve other Elohim, which you have not known. Then you shall inquire and make search, and ask carefully, and behold, if the thing is truly established, that is an abominable thing that has been done among you. Surely you shall strike those who live in the city by the mouth of the sword, destroying it completely, and all that is in it, and its livestock with the mouth of the sword. Now, this is a different time and a different culture where people were killing people with swords, and they were destroying the rumors with swords, and destroying the talk against Yahweh with the swords. I'm not saying this is physically them going there and putting a knife through that person's heart and killing them and taking away their life, but these people definitely were told to stop the rumors, which is considered a great sin, Lashon Hara, to sin. So if anyone's talking against Yah, again, it's a traditional system that they were to follow, and it was set up where you would take these situations, but they were definitely told to the mouth of the sword. Some people say the sword is the mouth. One way or another, whether it's physically killing them or whether it's killing the rumors, we can't say for sure what it was, but or what we'll do. There's a different culture. We're not going to go stoning people. But I'm just telling you what the scripture says. You can translate it how you want, and that's what it says. And verse 16, it says, You shall gather all of its spoil in the middle of its own open place, and it shall burn in the city with fire and all that spoil, completely before Yahweh your Elohim. And not any of the cursed things shall cleave to your hands, so that Yahweh shall turn you from the furnaces of his anger, and shall give mercies to you, and shall love you, and shall multiply you, as he has sworn to your fathers. When you listen to the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to keep all his commandments which I am commanding you to do today, to do that which is right in your eyes of Yahweh your Elohim. So if you're going to do what is right in his eyes, you don't have to worry about any of the possible consequences, whether it's a traditional system or some over-righteous person wanting to destroy you or kill you. You don't have to worry anything about that. If you follow his guidelines and instruction, that doesn't concern you. That's it. So we need to follow his guidelines and instructions. Now we're going to go to chapter 14 here, and it says, You are sons to Yahweh your Elohim. You shall not cut yourselves nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. And this here is talking about what the other cultures did at the time. That's what they did. They would shave themselves and make tattoos for the dead. It says, For you are a holy people, or set apart a people to Yahweh your Elohim. And Yahweh has chosen you to be people to him, a special treasure out of all the people who are on the face of the earth. You shall not eat any abominable thing. So that's one thing. An abominable thing is what he calls unclean. It says, You should not eat any abominable thing. These are the animals which you shall eat. These are the animals which you shall eat. And now it gets into what the clean animals are of our Creator. And it says the ox, the flocked sheep, and the flocked goat. And it goes all the way through this chapter, and it talks about this. The hart and the gazelle, and the roe deer, and the wild goat, and antelope, and aurochs, and mouthfulin. And you may eat every animal that divides the hoof and divides the two hoofs wholly, and chews the cud amongst the animal. Now, I never used to know what cud means, but basically, when you got the cud, it's basically is chewing it or regurgitating his own food and chewing it. And so those animals, along with the animals that have the divided hoof, and that's what makes an animal clean, the hoof and the cud. But you shall not eat of those that only chew the cud, or those that only dividing the cloven hoof. The camel and the hara and the rock badger, for they chew the cud, but they do not divide the hoof, they shall be unclean to you. And the swine, because it divides the hoof, but does not chew its own cud, and it is unclean to you. You shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their dead body. Now, if you decide to eat animal products, we've just discussed some of them. And basically, we're going to get into the fish next, but these are the instructions of what food we need to be eating. And remember, it's not a salvation issue, but it is a blessing issue. One of those curses of disobedience is death, a premature death, folks. And it says, so we need to follow this information, these instructions, whether you like it or not. And I know a lot of people, they don't want to give up their sea cockroaches, I mean a lobster, and things like this. But you must, because those things are unclean. Verse 10, And whatever does not have fins and scales you shall not eat. It shall be unclean to you. You shall eat of clean birds, but you shall not eat of these: the eagle, the bold vulture, and the bearded vulture, and the hawk, and the falcons, and the kite by its kinds, and all ravens by their kinds, and the ostrich, and the great owl, the seagull, and the small hawks by their kinds, the little owl, and the eared owl, and the barn owl. And then it goes in to say everything you must not eat. Going down, now it talks about what you can eat in verse 20. And in 20 it says you can eat anything that is died of itself, so you must give it, you may give it to an alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it. Verse 21 says, you shall not eat of anything that died of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people of Yahweh Elohim. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Well, we're talking about two different things here. First one, when it says you may not eat it. So it's saying you cannot eat roadkill pretty much, but you can give it to somebody, a foreigner and a non-believer, or you can go ahead and sell it to somebody who's not a believer. But here at the end of this verse 21, it says you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Now the Orthodox community today take this very strictly, and besides keeping a Shabbat, probably the most popular thing that an Orthodox person does or doesn't do is eating milk and meat together. And they use this scripture or this verse as a reasoning of that. But here's what they do, and here's the problem. Remember, we just read in this week's Torah portion, do not add or take away, but do it. Well, they're adding it right here, because when it says you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, it wasn't literally saying don't take a kid and boil in his mother's milk. What it was referring to is a pagan practice amongst the Canaanites that they had around that time, or one of the pagans around that time, where they would where they would kill their babies and sprinkle the blood over the field to make it more fertile for the next season. And so it says you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. So apparently that's the way they did it. So this is really saying you shall not copy those ways, because you were set apart. Then verse 22, tithing you shall tithe all the increase of your seed that the field yields by year. And you shall eat before Yahweh your Elohim in a place which he chose to cause his name to dwell there. The tithe of your grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and of the firstlings of your herd, and of your flock, that you may learn to fear Yahweh Elohim. And if the way is too long for you, so that you cannot carry it, because the place is too far from you, which Yahweh Elohim shall choose to set his name out there, when Yahweh Elohim shall bless you, then you shall give it for silver, and bind up the silver in your hand, and you shall go into the place of which Yahweh Elohim shall choose. And you shall pay the silver for whatever your soul rightly desires, for oxen, for sheep, or for wine, or for fermented drink, and for whatever your soul desires. And you shall eat there and before Yahweh Elohim, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. And you shall not forsake the Levite who is within your gates, for he has no portion of inheritance with you. At the end of 3 years, even the same year, you shall bring forth all the tithe of your increase, and you shall lay them up within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no portion or inheritance with you, and the alien and the fatherless and the widow who are with you in your gates shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, so that Yahweh your Elohim may bless you in all the work of your hand, which you do. So to eat and to be satisfied. Satisfied, I often say, is one of the major diseases in all Scripture. People just never seem satisfied with what they got. They always want more. Well, the Scriptures say right here, you shall eat and be satisfied, so that Yahweh Elohim may bless you in all your work. So if you're not satisfied, how could he bless you? That's what Scripture says here. How he can bless you is you need to be satisfied. So now we're going to get up to chapter 15 here, and it says, and at the end of 7 years you shall make a release. Now we talk about the release of debts and the 7-year the release of land that you purchased. It goes back to the original. It says it right here. Let's read it. It says, at the end of 7 years you shall make a release, and this is the manner of the release. Everyone who has a loan to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact of his neighbor and his brother, because the release has been proclaimed for Yahweh. You may exact it from a foreigner, but your hand shall release whatever is yours within your border. Only that there should be no one in need among you. So no matter how many debts were owed, everyone pretty much started off equal here every 7 years. You talk about a boost for the economy, so that would sure do it, is if everyone had no more debts after 7 years. But the people, they took an oath, and when they took a debt, they made an oath. And back then it was different, because when people said they were going to do something, paying something off or something, they did it if they could. And if they couldn't, they truly couldn't. They didn't just say I can't and go out and buy other stuff. You know, they truly couldn't do it. And it says, only that there shall be no one in need among you. And what a great system that would be today if that happened, but for the right reasons, not just to get out of debt, but because everyone was sticking to a scriptural message. For Yahweh will greatly bless you in a land that Yahweh your Elohim is giving you for inheritance to possess. Only if carefully you will listen to the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to take heed to do all these commandments which I am commanding you. For Yahweh your Elohim will bless you as he promised you, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow, and you shall rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over you. If there is a poor man among you, one of your brothers inside any of your gates in your land, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving to you, you shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your needy neighbor, but you shall open your hand wide to him, and surely you shall lend him enough for his need, and that which he lacks. So lacking food, needing hot water, or needing food to live, these are needs, not, oh, you know, your neighbor can't afford his cable bill, so you're going to pay it for him. No, that's a luxury, not a need. And we got to distinguish between the two. But yes, we are to go and find the needy and help them. Beware that there is no evil thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release draws near, and your eyes have begun evil against your needy brother. And you have given him nothing, and he cried to Yahweh against you, and it is be sin to you. Surely you shall give to him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you gave to him, because Yahweh your Elohim will bless you for this thing in your work, and in all that you do, you pour your hand into. For the needy will never cease from the midst of the land. On account of this I command you, saying, you shall open your hand to your poor and needy brother in your land. I often talk, folks, about homeless people, and it's a very sad thing today where you could see a Christian pastor in a mansion and there's homeless people down the block. And it's just amazing what people do here and how they don't follow this, where it says, you shall not neglect your needy brother in your land. Now it gets a little into the slavery here, and I did a big talk about slavery on another Torah portion. If you could find it, look at the previous Torah portions. And it all spoke about slavery, because I often get a question about slavery in the scriptures, and it's mentioned here several times. And that whole Torah portion, I explained all about that. Verse 12 says, if your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you set him free from you, you shall not let him go away empty. You shall richly adorn him from your flock and from your threshing floor and from your wine presses, with which Yahweh your Elohim had blessed you, you shall give to him. So bless people because you've been blessed is a very good motto that I would say it says here in the scriptures. Verse 15, and you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yahweh Elohim redeemed you. On account of this, I command you to do this thing today. And it shall be, if he says to you, I will not go out from you, meaning you're the slave, if the slave says to you that, because he loves you in your house, because it was good for him with you, then you shall take an awl and put it through his ear, and through the door, and he shall be your slave forever. And you shall do so to your slave girl also, and shall not seem hard in your eyes when you send him away for free from you. For the double of the hire of the hireling he has served you 6 years, and Yahweh Elohim will bless you in all that you do. The firstling males that are born of your herd and are born of your flock, you shall sanctify with Yahweh. You shall do no work with the firstling of your ox, nor shear the firstling of your flock. You shall eat it before Yahweh your Elohim year by year in a place which Yahweh chose you to and your household. And if there is any blemish in it, lameness or blindness, or any evil blemish, whatever, you shall not sacrifice to Yahweh Elohim. You shall eat it inside your gates as unclean one. You shall eat it inside your gates, the unclean one and the clean one alike, as the gazelle and of the hart. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. Now we're going to get up to chapter 16, folks, and we're going to get back into some of the feast days and the instructions for that. And again, this is recapping stuff we've already discussed in the Torah. This is not new. So this is something everyone should be doing or learning or growing in, but not neglecting it like most Christians do today. Chapter 16. Observe the month of Aviv and perform the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim. For the month of Aviv, Yahweh your Elohim brought you out of Egypt by night. And that is known as Passover. The month of Aviv is often April. Sometimes it can be in March, but it's a Passover. And it's different days because our calendar is so messed up. But it's always the month of Aviv on our Creator's calendar. And you shall sacrifice a Passover to Yahweh your Elohim of the flock and of the herd in the place which he shall cause his name to dwell there. You shall eat it with no leaven. You shall eat it unleavened bread with it 7 days, even the bread of affliction, so that you may remember the day that you came out of the land of Egypt, all the days of your life. And there shall be no leaven seen with you in your borders 7 days, nor shall any of the flesh which you sacrificed the first day at the evening remain all night until the morning. You may not sacrifice the Passover offering inside any of your gates, which Yahweh Elohim gives, but at the place which he shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. You shall sacrifice the Passover offering at evening, at the going down of the sun, at the time when you came out of Egypt. And you shall cook and eat in the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. And in the morning you shall turn and go into your tents. You shall eat unleavened things 6 days, and on the 7th day you shall be a solemn assembly to Yahweh your Elohim. You shall do no work. You shall number yourselves 7 weeks. When the sickle begins to reap in the standing grain, you shall begin to number 7 weeks. And you shall keep the feast of weeks to Yahweh your Elohim, according to the message of the freewill offering of your hand, which you shall give according to Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, you and your son and your daughter and your male slave and your slave girl, and the Levite is inside your gates, that's inside your gates, and the alien and the fatherless and the widow that are among you, in the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. And you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall take heed not to do all these statutes. Now it says over and over again to remember you were a slave in Egypt, you were once a foreigner, so you got to think about that when you're treating other foreigners and other slaves. You got to think about how you treated them. Verse 13, you shall perform the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days after you have gathered in from your grain floor and from your winepress. And if you want to know the exact days, again, you go to the Hebrew calendar. It usually falls in September or October on our calendar. And you shall rejoice in the feast, you and your son, your daughter, your male slave, and your slave girl, and the Levite, and the alien, and the fatherless, and the widow that are inside your gates. So basically, everyone is supposed to take this Feast of Tabernacles, and it's a time to rejoice. Where the Passover was the remembrance of the children leaving Israel, and that they were once slaves in Egypt. There could be sober moments to Tabernacles, but and you definitely have to remember what happened, and Yeshua being born, and it was just Sukkot up at that time. All of this, but it's a time of rejoicing for the most part, as it says here. And then verse 15, you shall keep a solemn feast 7 days to Yahweh your Elohim in the place which Yahweh shall choose. For Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you in all your produce and every work of your hand, and you shall be altogether joyful. Now, first of all, this was Jerusalem, where every male is called to go once a year, for Jerusalem, for Passover, and for Shavuot. These are the days that the males were called to go there. Now do the best you could. Now there's no temple. They were told to go to the temple to make their sacrifice. So there's your loophole, okay? No, really, folks, we got to practice. We can't keep these things because there's no temple, so we're not going to sacrifice something if there's no temple. But we still keep the Passover, or we celebrate the Passover, we celebrate the tabernacles, and we do it as close as we possibly can according to the scriptures here. So 15 says, "You shall keep a solemn feast 7 days to Yahweh your Elohim in a place which Yahweh shall choose. For Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you in all your produce and every work of your hands, and you shall be altogether joyful. 3 times a year shall your male appear before Yahweh your Elohim in a place which he shall choose." And this is what we just discussed. In the Feast of Unleavened Bread, well, I said Passover, it's really called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which are actually 2 things. The Passover was a one-night event, but the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that was the 7-day feast. And the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of Tabernacles, which we just discussed. "And they shall not appear before Yahweh empty." So you went there with something to bring him, not empty-handed. And then verse 17, "But each with his gift of his hand, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you." And that is the last verse in this week's Torah portion. And next week we're going to read the Torah portion. It's going to be Torah portion number 48. And it's going to be Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9. Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9. If you have any questions or comments about this week's Torah portion, post them below the video and we'll get to them. And thanks for checking us out. And please look at all the other Torah portions and the videos on TorahLife.tv. Thank you for joining us for this week's Torah portion, and thank you for being a faithful watcher of these Torah portion videos. I really do my best to try to get the message out there best I can. So thank you for watching. Have a great day, and shalom, shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life Ministries, come out of the world.